freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. We didn't pass it on to our children in the bloodstream. The only way they can inherit the freedom we have known is if we fight for it, protect it, defend it, and then hand it to them with the well-taught lessons of how they in their lifetime must do the same. And if you and I don't do this, then you and I may well spend our sunset years telling our children and our children's children what it once was like in America when men were free.
Hey everybody, welcome to episode number 221 of Gun Freedom Radio, where we engage, we educate, and we inform. We are brought to you by AZFirearms.com, your nationwide hometown gun shop. I am one of your hosts, Cheryl Todd.
And I'm the other guy, Dan Todd. Our theme today is Second Amendment Sanctuary Movement, and our guest is Drake Mitchell. Drake is a member of AZ2A.org, which is the Arizona Second Amendment Sanctuary City, County, and Reservation Movement. Could we add my area to my house and the stores to that?
Absolutely. Drake is also the current chairman of the Arizona Citizens Defense League, PAC,
Correct.
with his primary goal as unelecting anti-gun, anti-right politicians whenever possible, because he says we cannot continue to support the same folks who have proven that they will vote against the Bill of Rights and expect any kind of different results. Welcome to the show, Drake.
Thank you both for having me on. It's always a pleasure to see you and Dan. What you do for the pro-rights, pro-gun community cannot be overstated. You folks are the whole reason we're able to do what we do and get the message out. So thank you again for everyone that you have on every one of your casts.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that so much. It's truly an honor for us to be able to, reach out to people and not just have these amazing conversations like we're about to have with you, but to expand them to not even just our city, not even just our state, not even just our nation, but we have listeners all over the world. And these ideas inspire people, and I can't help but believe that they're not changing lives.
Yeah,
I
and
believe
Drake,
they are changing lives.
Yes, Drake, thank you very much. And we learn every day too. And today I learned a new word, and I really appreciate it because I never thought of this word before. Unelecting. We think about electing people all the time, but the unelecting.
Yeah.
Well,
That's great.
There are times when we don't have an option. There's one person running for a position in a primary, and that's what you get, right? If you choose a red or a blue, maybe an independent if you're lucky and have an third option, but rarely can we get these embedded people that continue to get reelected, mostly because there's nobody running against them in a primary. So I want to talk later at your convenience when you decide about the different legislative districts and the places where we have choices that are good choices, and see if we can't make some changes.
Well, I think we're probably set up as well as we are going to be, well as we have had the opportunity to be for a lot of years. And that is because over this COVID-19 season that we're still sitting in, we're in the studio on Monday, June 29th of 2020. We're going through another spike here of this COVID stuff in Arizona. We've had unrest in the cities with demonstrations that turned into protests that turned into demonstrations that turned into rioting. And this whole defund the police thing that's going on around the nation, and millions of Americans have woken up to the idea that the Bill of Rights and the Second Amendment in the Bill of Rights actually does pertain to their individual lives. They've gone out, they've purchased guns, they've started to realize that laws that they were previously in favor of, oh, now that affects me. Maybe I don't like that law so much anymore. Oh, that politician that's been feeding me lies, oh, maybe I don't like that politician so much anymore. So I feel like we're set up in such a unique way to make some real positive changes, to move that line back to where our founders placed it when they fought, bled, starved, and died for the privilege to even author. Hey, we're twins. We both have the Constitution, the same one.
I don't ever have a conversation like we're going to have without this, because when we start talking about red flag laws, for example, and we can kind of just flip through the Bill of Rights and see how many different ways and places they are attempting to subvert the rule of law, deny our basic rights, including the Miranda rights, and procedures and policies that are already in place, and by these crazy laws. It's criminal, personally.
And half of the politicians out there don't even know what's in the Constitution. That's the scary thing. Just like that governor in New Jersey, was it New Jersey? He said that that's above my pay grade. The Constitution is above his pay grade.
Then he shouldn't
said
have
that in public. Well, yeah, they should have took his keys away that day.
Well,
how you can swear an oath to protect and defend something that you won't read.
Thank you.
Beyond me.
Thank you. Well, and then I have to laugh because, when I said there are people that are watching on YouTube, and then there's people that are only listening to the audio of this. And so I have to say that we were both holding up the exact same kind of Constitution. They have the same cover, printed by the same company. But when I said that we both have the same Constitution, I thought, you know what, that is a statement all by itself. There isn't a left Constitution and a right Constitution, a Democratic and a Republican Constitution. We all have the same one. So I just that's kind of struck me as funny. So
if our legislators would just slow down and look at every bill in the framework of, does it support and strengthen the Constitution, or does it work against the Constitution? So to me, if they did that, most of this other stuff would not happen. So
true.
Well, there's some that are clearly against the Constitution and finding ways to chip away from it, just like they do with the gun laws. I mean, the people that say we just want to take your AR-15s away, that's just the first step. They want to take everything away, including cap guns. Right. Yeah, so they started. Yeah.
So the T-shirt you're wearing, actually, we can peek the tiny bit of it there. That's your logo. I love it, and that is for the Second Amendment sanctuary city, county, and reservation movement. And I want to dig into that because it has that similar sound to a different movement that it has to do with the immigration issue. So it can be confusing to people when you just say, well, Arizona is a sanctuary state for the Second Amendment, but then people are a little lost because some people don't even know that the Bill of Rights exists, right? They don't even know that there are amendments and that the second one is our legal definition of our God-given rights to keep and bear arms. So dive into your movement and where that comes from and how is it different from the immigration issue?
Well, the immigration issue is basically pushing illegal immigration and is actually a violation of law because they're supporting and helping people break the law. Whereas what we're doing is supporting the Constitution and trying to show support at the city, county, and reservation level for the Second Amendment and the rule of law that codifies our right to bear arms. So it's just inherently different. We did actually follow other states that had previously used the sanctuary name, and they did it with intent to take back the verbiage, intent to take back the language. So for us, it's rather fun to get the left kind of cranked up by taking their words back from them.
It's true. That is so true. And so, something that is so clearly delineated in our Bill of Rights to the degree that it is the only place in our Constitution or our Bill of Rights, the only place in our founding documents, the only place in any of the amendments that it has the kind of gun rights for dummies clause at the end that says shall not be infringed. Like, I can see our founding fathers going, all right, what do we have to say to help people go, all right, there's no asterisks there. There's no well, right? Unless this happens, then we can infringe. Unless your neighbors are nervous that you own guns, then we can infringe. So when it's so clearly delineated in our Bill of Rights, why would we need a sanctuary space carved out in our state?
Why would we need it? Well, because they continue to try to violate it. And so it's basically saying from the city, county, and reservation levels, we're not going to comply. You can pass any laws or ordinances you wish. We don't deem them constitution, and we are not going to support them. And they do that in 3 different ways. One, the lowest level would be a proclamation, which is basically saying, yay, 2A, we believe in the Constitution. It doesn't have any real force of law. There's no penalty for breaking it, or there's not even we're not going to do certain actions to support it. So after that proclamation comes a resolution as far as strength of what they can say and do. And it's basically resolving, in most cases, to not fund, not to aid, not to allow any county employee, for example, to spend any of their time, which is the county's time and the county's money, to research or support anybody coming from outside of the city, county, or reservation to try to enforce unconstitutional, by state and federal constitutions, by the way. Article 2, Section 26, bearing arms in the Arizona Constitution is even clearer than the original Constitution, and shall not be impaired. So it's even trying to be clearer. And then comes an ordinance. Now, ordinance is actually our goal, because we would like, if it is a criminal crime to violate somebody's civil rights, shouldn't it be a criminal offense to violate our constitutional rights?
Yes.
I mean, and if you violate, be it the Voting Act, be it because of somebody's race, color, sex, creed, sexual orientation, it's a crime. Why shouldn't it be the same thing to violate our state and federal constitution? So ordinance is actually kind of the pinnacle of what we would like to see. We have examples. I sent you some copies of them. They are also on our website, the AZ2A.org, movement.org site, and on our Facebook page, which is the AZ2A movement on Facebook. So we try to put information out there because knowledge is power. And although we set up our group about the same time several other counties had on their own organically grown groups like ours, the group that I was a part of in Yavapai County and pushing in Coconino weren't even the first. It was Mojave, and then the Mojave folks helped their friends in La Paz County. So it's one of those kind of things that everybody was looking at what was happening and how our state legislature every year for the last 4 years, since Governor Ducey got in office and ran Arizona's first red flag law, has had red flag laws and multiple laws that would have banned even an 1870s Winchester because it could hold more than 5 rounds in a magazine. So it's just that they put forward lists, and I would really recommend that everyone go to the Arizona Citizens Defense League website, AZCDL.org, and look at the bill tracker page, the legislation tab bill tracker page. It'll show you examples after example after example, sometimes 20, 30, 40 anti-gun, anti-rights pieces of legislation in a session. And you'll also be very clear to see how much worse we've done under the reign of Governor Ducey as far as pro-gun, pro-rights things. He's not a friend of the Second Amendment. He might hand out buttons on election time, but his actions speak louder than his words. He actively gets the leadership in the Senate and the House to not put forward pro-gun bills and to kill them in the House and the Senate just by not giving them a third read. A lot of people don't understand all the little steps that a bill has to do. It's not like the cartoon we used to see on,
I'm just a bill up on Capitol Hill.
Yeah, you got it. So it's much more complicated, and there are a lot of ways that these Machiavellian people can torpedo stuff, stab us in the back, go against what the citizens want. And I'll go to SB 1519, because that was Doug Ducey's first chance and try at a red flag law. He has since called red flag laws the crown jewel of his gun control program. And it was run by Senator Steve Smith at the time. And here's the thing, every Republican senator, because it's what the government wanted, voted for it. Now the Democrats voted against it, which really floored us, but they voted against it because they were trying to add even more anti-gun, anti-rights things to it. So it wasn't because they wasn't, one of their bills, and they've actually run more red flag bills since then, but it was the first one, and it actually came from Republicans. So we have to understand that. And so we have some options this time to replace some of those senators that voted for it. Some of them are now out of a Senate seat, but running for a House seat because they get termed out, and or take some time out of the legislature. We're just trying to make sure that they get a lot of time out of the legislature. That's our goal. Give them a timeout.
Right. Could you imagine if we could have a law that says if you do anything to upset the Constitution, that you're going to be held accountable for it immediately? Wouldn't that be
or else?
They'd have to think before they made a law, wouldn't they?
Oh my gosh!
They'd have to think.
Right, because they do it with impunity right now. It's just, a bunch of words on the paper, and it either goes through or it doesn't go through. But once those words are on the paper, like federally, we've got the HR 5717 that is an abomination of individual firearms listed by make and model and manufacturer of the guns that the other side, and again, some of them wear R's on their chest, Republican, some wear D's on their chest, Democrat, but the other side that hates our rights and hates those of us that understand our rights and use our rights, they write this stuff down. And sometimes, I have a good friend who is, she's involved in a group called the Liberal Gun Club. And that sounds like a contradiction in terms to a lot of people, right? Well, if you're liberal, how are you pro-gun? Well, there are a lot of people out there that ascribe to the Democratic Party. Maybe they're socially liberal, whatever the case may be, but they do value their Second Amendment rights. And she is one of them. Well, I showed her a bill similar to the 5717 maybe 2 years ago, and she just poo-poo. Oh, that'll never pass. And the fact that she believes that it will never pass is no reason to poo-poo anything. If you're going to write an abomination that may at some point pass because we get emotional about something, because there's a horrible murder somewhere that we all get emotional about and think we've got to do something, right? In air quotes. Now this thing's laying there just waiting for somebody to blow the dust off of it and let it sail on through with all kinds of feel-good senators and congresspeople giving it their blessing. And I would love the idea that you say there's an or else clause on there. It's like, shall not be infringed. And if you try, you're going to face some consequences.
It's the only way, that and elections.
Yes.
And so when the opportunity comes, we try to teach people about single shotting on a ballot if there's multiple people, say, running for a House seat. If you only vote for one with a proven track record, you're basically also getting a vote against the others, because it's the top two vote getters in the House races. And in the Senate, if there is a choice that is at all reasonable, which we have several races, and we can go over those here in a minute when you want, that we need to take it. We need to vote for them. And even if the person we want to vote out wins, when their margin goes from a win of 20% to a win of 2%, hopefully they're going to take the message that we're trying to send.
There's a lot of nuance and strategy involved in things like that. And people, I think, sometimes get a little too black and white in their thinking. And the other side is taking advantage of that because their base understands the nuance. So go figure.
Well, and one of the nuances they're also using a lot in legislation is they have a really kind of vague shell of a bill, and then they make it so that, all the details will be worked out administratively by the agencies that are going to be enforcing it. Well, you know what that gets you? Just like with the ATF, they were trying to put M193, which is a copper jacketed lead bullet, but for a 223-556, and put that in the same category as an armor piercing with tungsten penetrator 855 bullet, and ban them. And it's like, so any full metal jacket 223 or 556 would be illegal? That's just nuts. So I mean, this whole just give power to unelected administrators thing, in my mind, is one of the reasons we have a problem in just about every every regulatory body, be it EPA, ATF, name one, name an acronym.
Absolutely. Amen to that. Before we move on to dig deeper into the AZCDL PAC, which is, all that strategy and nuance about unelecting and electing people, before we dive into that, how is law enforcement, and specifically sheriffs across our state, how are they reacting to the Second Amendment sanctuary city movement, city, county, and reservation? The reason I specify sheriffs is because sheriffs are elected, and mostly they understand that we are their bosses, right? We are the people that hired them with our votes. But we have sheriffs who have, conservative leanings, and we have sheriffs that have liberal leanings.
Exactly.
And, it depends on where you are in the state a lot of times as to how somebody enacts their office. So what has been your experience with this?
Overall, it's been extremely good. But because they actually answer to the county commissioners, right? If we changed the sheriff's funding so that it was more like schools, an automatic percentage goes out and goes to them, where they weren't necessarily having to toe a line or be careful in what they say, or hide it. I'm for you, but I can't speak out publicly, so I can't come to your thing and educate people about it. We would have, I think, especially in Arizona, a little more vocal support. Most of them have come out, but only after they knew which way the wind was blowing, and they were having in the Board of Supervisors meetings. So it's been really good, especially Gila County, which we're still working on. That their sheriff has been really good. And by the way, he got COVID, and we're wishing him the best. I hope he gets better. We've had some other counties. Boy, Mojave County was awesome. Yavapai County stepped up and talked well for us. So it's great. And they also understand why we're doing it. And I think I haven't met a sheriff yet who would talk to us that was negative. Now, there are some that won't meet with us because it's strictly political as far as they're concerned. but the rank and file, the officers, oh, they are so for this.
That's awesome.
Not only do they believe in the Constitution and the Second Amendment, as written in both the federal and the state constitution, but they sure as heck don't want to be the ones that are told to go try to take people's guns. And they're like, that sounds like a quick way to die. We should probably not do this.
Well, it shouldn't matter whether a sheriff's liberal, Democrat, whatever. The Constitution is the Constitution, and they swear to it when they are put in office. If they follow that rule, then half the laws that are on the books would have to be denied, right?
Well,
they can't enforce them.
And they wouldn't enforce them, exactly.
Right.
And that's actually been where in some states they've actually had the sheriff say, we're not going to enforce this. So you can write whatever you want, you can pass whatever you want, but we're not going to enforce it. So only when they step up when pushed are we really going to see their colors. And so hopefully they continue to do that. Sheriff Mack has been working hard in the Constitutional Sheriffs and Peace Officer Association to educate both new and current officers from the city, county, and sheriff's level. So we really want him to continue what he does, because boy, does he bring something to the table. So he was one of the first sheriffs to sue the federal government for what he considered an unconstitutional law that they were trying to A, get him to enforce, and B, enforce in his county. And he said no.
And that was against Clinton too, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And he lived.
And Sheriff Mack, look him up on Amazon. He's got a couple of books, which I do recommend. They're good reading. You might be able to find them in the library. Talk about a David and Goliath story. That's one. Try to fight the federal law enforcement government. Oh my gosh. So it's just a testament, though, to what one man with a moral compass can do.
Yeah.
So that's what we really want to encourage people to do.
I'm not sure we have that in Maricopa County.
The Maricopa County Sheriff is kind of like the Phoenix PD Chief of Police. They're party driven. And if they want to be kinder and gentler on some things, but we still feel they should be enforcing the law. When law enforcement leadership starts picking and choosing what laws to enforce and when, it's no longer equal and fair justice under the law. So it might as well be, we're going to enforce it against blacks but not whites. It's the same mentality in my mind and many of the people that I work with. So we just want it to be equal justice under the law, equal application of the law. In the Arizona Citizens Defense League, we've actually had conversations. It's not our main thrust, but as the Defense League got bigger, we've kind of broadened the footprint. But one of the things I'm doing on my own is talking with groups about justice in sentencing, because you can find statistical proof that Native Americans, Hispanics, blacks overall tend to get between a 5 and 20% greater sentence. I also would like to get some uniformity in how people get their rights restored. Right now, because there's 3, 4, 5 levels of courts and 15 counties, you could have dozens of different ways, costs, time frames to do it. Some you just can't do without an attorney. And that's, again, not equal and fair justice. We're all Arizonans. We're all Americans. And that, I think, would go a long way to becoming more colorblind in our legal system. So until they do that and actually take those things seriously, and that's one of the things I really love about the Arizona Citizens Defense League, they actively try to do things that help everyone and are totally colorblind.
Absolutely.
And so when they approach a Democrat in the legislature and they automatically, because we are a pro-gun person, even though that's rights for all, they won't work with us on issues. And there's a lot of issues. We could get a lot of good things done if they just would talk to us.
Mm-hmm.
So I personally, as of the end of the primary season, will be stepping down from the PAC. It was an agreement I came to with the board in January, and that basically happened because of some of the legislators. As the head of the PAC, Political Action Committee, I was trying to determine, kind of like Santa, who's been naughty, who's been nice, so I know who to support. And I asked the legislators, House and Senate, for a no red flag law pledge. Some groups asked them to fill out 20-question questionnaires or make a bazillion different oaths and promises, and I asked for one thing.
Mm-hmm.
And they always have three options. They can run, they can hide, or they can fight.
Mm-hmm.
And people like Sylvia Allen chose to fight. They sicked the House and Senate leadership and the governor's office on the legislative arm. Okay, we have a division of labor. I am a PAC, and we cannot directly work with the Arizona Citizens Defense League.org. They're legislative, right? They threatened to not hear any of our bills. They threatened to, they just basically beat up on Dave Kopp, the president and chief lobbyist, for me asking for one thing, a no red flag law pledge. So that just tells you that they don't want their constituents to know about it.
Mm-hmm.
They don't want to talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
They have even tried to rewrite history, and some of them, like Senator Allen, Senator Burgess, who's now running for a House seat in LD1, well, yeah, we voted for it, but we didn't think it was going to pass in the House. Okay, well, you worked on it for 12 or 14 weeks. You saw 5 versions pass through, the workings, and you actually took the time and energy to get through committee and vote and discuss the bill and voted for it. So your path was clear. Your intent was to pass the bill. And I call it malice of intent, because SB 1519 had some very good things. It was a school safety bill with a red flag law kind of hidden in there.
Mm-hmm.
They got money for cops in schools. They got money for more counselors inside and outside the schools. So they would have augmentees. If a counselor had more than 2 kids with issues at a time, they could raise a hand and immediately get support from an outside agency with trained people.
Mm-hmm.
And then they had where there's going to be more money for the teachers to train, to learn more about the warning signs, so that they could hopefully head off and help kids with anger management issues or whatever their problem is, to stop the violence on campuses and the school shootings. When the red flag law got noticed and 35,000 plus negative emails came in, all of a sudden they let the thing die when the House wouldn't support it with the red flag law part of that bill in it. And the governor and Senator Smith, rather than agree to take that whole section out, tear it out, root and branch, they left it in and would allow the whole thing to die. So we could have more cops in our schools, more counselors inside and out of the school, more money for teacher training, and instead they let it die. So what was their real goal, Cheryl?
Oh, absolutely. It's like, here, I've made you this beautiful and nutritious meal, right? But okay, I sprinkled some poison on top, but you don't want to eat this? What's wrong with you? You don't want to, eat healthy. No, I don't want the poison. So how about we make the meal without the poison? But they do that all the time. And so the headlines read that, this politician or that politician isn't for saving the lives of our students in school, and it is such a disingenuous.
Well, they also clearly didn't want to say we're against the red flag law. If they would have took that out, then they had to admit, we're against the red flag law.
Yeah.
So that's why they dropped the whole bill.
Oh, yep. And then this was just super rich to me, that back in February of this year, 2020, we put together a Second Amendment rally, celebrate your Second Amendment rights. It's also falls over the birthday of Arizona. And just before that, I think it was just before that. Yeah. Ducey was quoted as saying, "As long as I am governor, we will never have a red flag law in the state of Arizona." And people went, "Oh my gosh, he woke up. This is amazing." No, he didn't, because his version, he doesn't refer to it as a red flag gun law. He refers to it as a stop law.
Exactly. Change the name and extreme risk order of protection and like 5 or 6 other names that you can find on Wikipedia under stop laws. It's just games. It's games. It's a shell game for them.
It's the infringe thing should be enough to say, wait, we can't do that. What if we go after the actual people that we're trying to protect society from,
right,
instead of the screwdriver, the knives, the guns, the cars, everything else? Go after the person itself if they're a threat.
Exactly, Dan. And here's again where I say they're being intellectually dishonest. We have Title 13 in the Arizona Revised Statutes, which is criminal.
Mm-hmm.
Title 36 is mental health. So they want these stop orders, red flag laws, extreme risk orders of protection to go around both of those legal documents that we've had for 240 something years in America, by saying, okay, we're going to send cops to arrest you for being a threat to yourself or someone else, or attempting to hurt yourself or someone else, both of which are crimes, right? All the above. But we're going to call it a civil action. So we're going to send cops to snatch you off the street or out of your house, take all your guns. If you're in custody, why do they need your guns? Put you in a mental health hold. Okay, so you're not Mirandized. You don't get an attorney. You don't get to have you have an ex parte hearing, meaning you're not there, where the judge gives the approval and a warrant to the cops to go pick you up.
So you're guilty at first.
Guilty until proven innocent.
Right.
Different versions of the stop order have had anonymous tip lines. Can anybody see a problem with that?
Gee whiz.
I got some neighbors that would love to probably call me in.
Whenever I think of those, I think of the Bewitched show with Mrs. Kravitz, constantly peering out the window and, reporting back, "Abner, you'll never believe what's going on next door," and then you empower people with an official, red phone to call and report on their neighbors' activities. It's cringy. It's really
cringeworthy. It's cringeworthy.
Besides that, Drake, it's useless anyway. I mean, think about it. Drake, if they came to your house and took all your guns, would they get them all?
I don't know.
Okay, don't have to answer that. You don't have to. I'm just saying.
I don't think Drake even has any guns.
No, he doesn't. But it's useless. It's useless because, they take my guns. Okay, that's them. That's not those.
Yeah.
It's just, they're not going to be, that is a non-effective way. Besides that, if you don't have a gun and you're crazy and you're going to cause harm with it, you're going to use something else. You're going to use a car.
Knife, truck, something. Mm-hmm. Well, and here's the part that bothers me the most. It's already in law. Why are they trying to go around legislation in the Arizona Revised Statutes? Mm-hmm. There's one reason, guys: burden of proof. If they don't have a burden of proof, they can't use Title 36 mental health. If they don't have the burden of proof, they can't use Title 13. They're trying to get this new way that basically allows them to become Soviet Russia, where you're guilty until proven innocent and you go to the hospital for a 72-hour hold. Mm-hmm. We looked into it, and from what I could find out, in the states that have these red flag laws, that 72-hour hold is actually between 5 and 7 days. After you get through the 72-hour hold, you have to have a court hearing to get released. And because of the lag time between your 72 hours and them getting you in front of a judge, that's where those extra time, up to more than double your original 72 hours, comes in. So I think it's very, very, very problematic. And then we had during the Senate hearing, and this is one of the things that's kind of neat in Arizona. You can find a copy of the SB 1519 Senate hearing at the state capitol website, right? The legislative website. And so if you go to the 1 hour and 22-minute mark, or 122 minutes, I forget which, you'll see a gentleman named Chick Arnold, very articulate man. He's the attorney for the mental health folks and a mental health expert, right? Well, Mr. Arnold clearly states that 100% of the time, even after your 72-hour hold, if they cannot find any diagnosable mental condition, so they basically can't say you're a danger to yourself or others and got X, Y, or Z wrong with you, right? They are still going to recommend you get the full 21-day mental health hold. 100%. The error on the side of caution is the term he used.
Yes.
So explain to me how, and I go back to my Constitution, and that falls under cruel and unusual punishment and is a violation of another right, because I think if you stick somebody in a mental health institution who has done nothing wrong, otherwise you'd be charging him, correct? You've violated all of his due process rights. You haven't Mirandized him, which means anything he says while in the mental health facility can be used against them. Who's paying the mental health people? The state. Who put you there? The state. They get access to all your records. Right. Everything you say will be used against you at a later date if they so choose.
For sure.
Isn't that a violation, again, of our rights? So I really want people to learn about these things. They sound good. Oh, well, it's going to save lives, or it's going to, if it saves just one life. How many times have we heard that? But this kind of thing is the same thing that Hitler used to disarm people. And there's no secondary checks and balances to this. And guess what? You're going to pay your own attorney. Again, it's not a crime. You haven't been Mirandized. You don't get an appointed legal defense, or the mental health people to testify in your defense that you're not crazy and that you should be released. So there's just too many holes. Just like most of the other gun problems, if they use the laws that are already on the books, simply enforce them equally and fairly, make the system work for us. That's all any of us want, is for the system that we already have to work.
Can you imagine if legislatures had to tell the truth? The name of that bill would be called the Guilty Until Proven Innocent Act.
Yeah.
That's what it would be called.
But they wrap it in these feel-good things, like the one I mentioned earlier, the House bill at the federal level, 5717. It's called like the Gun Safety and Community Kumbaya movement or something. I don't know. It's ridiculous.
It's crazy.
So we need to dive in before we run out of all of our time and talk more about the AZCDL PAC, the Political Action Movement. And you've talked about it a little bit, but I want to know, is it a specifically partisan group? Are you really only...
Oh, no. It's not about... I'm sorry. Go ahead.
And so do you support certain pro-rights candidates, or do you sort of expose candidates that you believe that are not living up to their constitutional oath? How does this whole thing work?
Okay. So first order of business is always to find out who has written a gun law, supported by being an original sponsor. So we bring them what we call model legislation outlines from the Arizona Citizen Defense League or the NRA, and then they take that on as their own, push it forward, have the legal people go over it, write it into what becomes law, and then champion that bill. And then you have people that maybe sort of sometimes vote for gun rights bills or civil, I call them civil rights bills.
Yeah.
Or vote against our rights. So we then try to support the candidates that we can. Some of them have Too much of disparity in funding. The other person's got 10 or 20 times the money. They're also an incumbent, so they have, name recognition. They collected 5 times this, 10 times the signatures getting on the ballot. They're holding more events. So there are some people that, although we'd love to have a change, they're just not viable candidates for us to support monetarily. It doesn't mean we won't give them, a wink and a nod and a written recommendation, endorsement to put on their website and to try to get Arizona Citizens Defense League folks to look at them. And that's where we've probably had our best effect. There are some candidates that we help with money. We're not a big PAC. We don't have a lot of money. So most of what we do is through getting our members excited and activated and out looking at new candidates so that they know that they have choices. That's one of the most disheartening things as a voter is to not have a choice.
Yeah.
So we really want them to feel that they have a choice and that these people have at least passed the first view in who they are and what they say.
Absolutely.
So go ahead.
Do you have some names of people? You want to name names of who you would encourage people to vote for in the 2020 election?
Well, in Legislative District 6, we have a incumbent Senator Sylvia Allen versus Colonel Wendy Rogers. She's won several primaries, but hasn't won office before. And here is a night and day story. We have somebody that used to be a good candidate, and that would be Sylvia Allen. In the past, before 2018, she did some good things. And she voted for us more often than not, but she'd never written a bill that was pro-gun, pro-rights. She's never been a direct sponsor of any bill that I was able to find or that she was able to tell us about. So when she voted for SB 1519 and then would not apologize and make a red flag law pledge, no red flag law pledge, she became on the other side of the piece of paper, right? She came into the bad column. Then we have Colonel Wendy Rogers, who years ago, gave the Arizona Citizens Defense League a no red flag law pledge. Now, she was running for federal office, so we couldn't support her. We're a statewide only PAC. But she put her ink first years ago. She's continued that stance. It's on her website. And she is probably our best hope in LD6 to actually get a constitutional person. And then let me slip down here. I brought up the website so I can track this. Everybody can see this on the Arizona Secretary of State elections info page. In District 14, we definitely want to support David Gowan. He's awesome for years. He was actually one of the first senators to come to me with a no red flag law pledge at our annual dinner. It was early even. He was back in October. In District 16, we need a change. Heather Carter is the incumbent senator. She's not really friendly to guns, not really friendly to pro-rights, pro-guns legislation. She more often than not votes with the other side of the aisle. From the legislative perspective, we really would like Nancy Bartow, who has previous legislative experience, has already always proven herself to be pro-gun, pro-rights in thought, word, and deed. So if somebody who happens to be in Legislative District 15 could look into Nancy Bartow again, they probably may have already voted for her for a House seat along the way. She would probably be a better choice if you're a gun owner. I will admit here publicly, I am kind of I'll call it two-issue person. Constitution first, Second Amendment always. So I don't look at all the other things. So Kelly Townsend, great rep. J.D. Mesnard has always been helpful, House and Senate. Then there's Mr. Angry. Where's Mr. Angry? This guy is a character. He's really smart, and I'm trying to find him. Just a moment, please. He is running unopposed in the primary, but I think would be a real help. Oh gosh, District 22. Now in District 22, we have David Livingston, who is the incumbent, who has always been a good, if not great supporter. He's also run several pro-gun bills, so he does have a track record, I think, of being more consistent in the past. Some people have a problem with him because of other legislation, and if they do, we have some great option in Hop Naigan. He is a Vietnamese extraction. He and his brother came here when they were in their late teens from Vietnam.
Wow.
So they love our veterans.
Mm-hmm.
And they really have, his brother actually, he's in District 22, but his brother is in LD1.
Mm.
So, and Quan is his name, and Quan is running for a House seat in LD1. And anybody who can choose one person in LD1 to vote for, it would be Quan. So he is a State Rifle and Pistol Association board member. He's
Mm-hmm.
done their shooting teams for years.
Mm-hmm.
His daughter is actually in the Naval Academy and the captain of their shooting squad.
Yeah.
So he has really embraced being an American. Then we have LD23. Senator Ugente Rita is the current incumbent, and pretty much anybody but her. Adam Kwansman withdrew. He would have been my first choice. Then there is an Alexander Koledin, as I think is how you properly say his name. I don't know much about him, but Ugente Rita is, oh my gosh. So she runs red flag laws level of person. So if we could, again, through one filter, I don't know all of her other things.
Sure.
But if we could find a replacement for her,
Mm-hmm.
it would be a good option for gun owners.
So we really need to start wrapping up. This is amazing information, and I want you to be able to tell people where they can go so they can, start making their lists so that they know who to really dive into and look at all the different issues. I'm a single issue voter because I think it encompasses, the Second Amendment encompasses your civil rights, your human rights, your women's rights, your every rights, your right to life, right? To protect your own life. But just at the bigger level, right? That federal level. I know that you are a state guy, but do you have any opinions about the choices that we're going to have between Mark Kelly, right? Who has become suddenly mute, right? Like as if he's never said a single thing about our gun rights, and he is rabidly anti-gun rights.
Yep.
Martha McSally, who is, currently serving, but somehow always feels she feels a little, lukewarm to me always when it comes to our Second Amendment rights, even though she has served in our armed forces. You would think that she would be just more, adamant. And then we've got Daniel McCarthy, who hasn't served before, as far as I know, citizen stepping up in the ring, really talks the Constitution. I think that's the only three running for that.
In his area, he's well known for being pro-gun, pro-rights, for shooting, for supporting the local pro-gun, pro-rights community. So my personal opinion, not as a member of any group or organization, is that Daniel McCarthy would be my first choice, because I personally have reached out to Senator McSally and got she's willing to discuss red flag laws and do what's needed to make people safe kind of thing. That's a no compromise issue as far as I'm concerned. She wouldn't support the Hearing Protection Act, which was basically going to make suppressors a non-controlled item. She wouldn't support a national CCW program. She has put no pro-gun, pro-rights legislation forward ever that I have had anyone be able to tell me about. But here's the problem. the establishment GOP isn't grooming good people, and they keep supporting these people that are entrenched and already in office. And just because, if you look at the people on paper, take their names out of it and say what they say and what they believe and what they do, you would without a doubt choose Daniel McCarthy across the board. And yet the establishment GOP from Kelly Ward on up is not doing that. They just support the McSally because they were tied into McCain, and it's that whole McCain clique thing. So we need to break that cycle, and that's one of the reasons I'm talking to people about these statewide races, because that's where most of these people get their first blush in politics.
Yes.
You know, if we could get Quan Nigan in LD1 and Selena Bliss, perhaps, or just single shot Quan. In LD6, Brenda Barton is coming back. She is amazing. She's won 3 different awards for Warrior of the Year from the AZCDL. Single shot Brenda Barton. That'll also send a message to the other people that are running for office that they need to be accountable. Then I like Jim Parks in LD7. I don't know David Peelman. He's also running. But Jim Parks was a county supervisor, and we know that he was very pro-gun and fought them, Coconino County, on some of their anti-gun stances, because it's a very liberal county.
Yes.
So it's hard. It's very hard for them.
For sure.
At Coconino and Tucson.
Yeah, I'm telling you, that's the thing. Hey, we've got to really wrap up. I've taken way more of your time than I planned to, but we could keep talking all day about these things because we both have such a passion for them. But just as we go out, Drake Mitchell of the Second Amendment Sanctuary Movement here in Arizona, please tell folks how they can find out more about all these candidates, find out more about the Sanctuary City movement, and just follow all the work that you're doing through the AZCDL PAC.
Well, as far as the candidates, if they go to azcdl.org, you can find a wrap up after every legislative session. So look into the May timeframe or June timeframe newsletter, and they will have a graph and what they voted for and what they voted against. Okay, so that is a great place to start. We try not to do the NRA way of just, well, they did one good thing 5 years ago, so we're always going to give them an A rating. That doesn't happen. I haven't done many ratings in the last 2 years, primarily because I feel it's too shallow a look. People have to understand the totality of what these people do. And then, but they do give a lot of information. Please read those newsletters. They're archived for 15 years back since the organization started. So you can learn a lot about the history and the problems we've had, especially in the last 4 or 5 years, getting legislation passed. So the azcdl.org website's a great resource.
Awesome. And then your Second Amendment Sanctuary?
The Second Amendment Sanctuary, az2a.org, and the AZ2A movement on Facebook. We're putting up a lot of our documents that we're trying to get passed so people can educate themselves on that and why. You also will see kind of, we're not trying to be terribly political or flame anybody just yet. But as people, I mean, we had 550 people plus show up at a Yavapai County Second Amendment Sanctuary meeting.
Wow. That's fantastic.
We had more people than the state GOP meeting.
That's fantastic.
So if a county board of supervisors member or an elected official in that county thinks they're going to hide on a Second Amendment issue, they are totally off base.
I love it. Talking to you, Mark Kelly. Talking to you.
We're going to keep them activated, if only to get them out to vote. I'm not necessarily telling them how to vote, but I am steering them to the records.
That's fantastic. So, Drake Mitchell, we so appreciate you. Thank you for all you're doing. It's such important work. I'm proud to know you.
Thanks, Drake.
Thank you guys very much for your time today.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.
Oh my gosh. We're so far over time, but That was such a good conversation.
Unelect.
And
You know,
don't
they-
elect in the first place.
Got
That's
me
the
thinking.
thing that gets me.
Got me thinking about this Constitution thing y'all were talking about.
Yeah. That's
Didn't let me put a word in there. I tried it 4 or 5 times and I go, you know what? I'm not going to fight it today.
just because I'm kicking you under the table every time I want to
But
say
anyway.
something. What are you talking about?
You know, at the very end of the second minute it says shall not be infringed.
Yeah.
What they needed to do way back, if we'd have had MC Hammer, can't touch this. Instead of infringes, you can't touch this.
Right. Well, what does infringe mean? That's a big word.
Yeah. But can't touch this? What's that mean?
Doom, doo, 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 doo.
Can't touch this.
All right. On that note, we got to get out of here. Thank you so much to our amazing listeners. Thank you for bringing us into your lives, whether you're listening on your drive to work or while you're working around the house or doing laundry or whatever it is, or you're out for your walk. Thank you so much for spending the time with us either on YouTube or on our website, GunFreedomRadio.com. Thank you so much to our awesome guests. And today, Drake Mitchell. Man, what a go-getter. That is such an ambitious program that he is involved in, and clearly it is resonating with the citizens of the state of Arizona. So we appreciate his efforts with the sanctuary movement for the Second Amendment. And until next time, pray for this nation.
Please pray for this
Holy
nation.
moly, it's nuts every time I turn on the news. I didn't watch it all weekend, and little glimmers I saw this morning, this is a Monday morning, made me feel like, oh man, we can't.
You call me? Did you say, oh man?
We can't leave the people, what's going on unattended out there. It's like ferrets. It's nuts. So pray for this nation. Please pray for our leaders, our elected officials, our representatives, whatever you want to call them. They need our prayers.
All of them?
All of them, Dan.
All right. I think you're right.
Even the ones you don't like.
Can't touch this.
Especially the ones you don't like. And Dan and I. Pray for Dan and I, too. We will definitely use those prayers. Be good to each other. Have a great week. And God bless. You gonna say bye?
Bye. Can't touch this.
Can't touch us. Bye.